Imagine this. You're a 72-year-old grandmother in Moscow. Your phone rings. A voice claims to be from the Federal Security Service. They say your bank account has been compromised by Ukrainian spies. To protect Russia, you must withdraw all your money and burn down the nearest bank. And you do it. This isn't fiction. This is happening right now across Russia. In just 10 days this December, 34 arson attacks have erupted from Vladivostok to St. Petersburg. Police stations engulfed in flames, railway infrastructure destroyed, military recruitment offices reduced to ash. But here's the twist. The attackers aren't foreign saboteurs. They're ordinary Russian citizens, pensioners, teenagers, desperate people manipulated by phantom voices on the phone. Russia is burning, but the matches are being lit from within. December 2024. Russia is fighting a war on two fronts, one in Ukraine, where soldiers die in trenches, the other at home, where the enemy has no face, no uniform, and strikes without warning. On December 3rd, a small-town bank in Yaroslav erupted in flames. Security footage showed an elderly woman calmly pouring gasoline across the entrance before igniting it. She made no attempt to escape. When police arrested her, she explained she received a call from someone claiming to be a government official. They told her Ukrainian hackers had stolen her pension. To stop them, she had to burn the bank. She believed every word. 2 days later in Kazan, a 16-year-old boy threw Molotov cocktails at a police station. His motive? A stranger on Telegram promised him $8,000. He needed the money for his sick mother. The building burned for 3 hours. December 8th. Novosibirsk. A railway signal station exploded in flames, halting military supply trains heading toward the Ukrainian front. The perpetrator? A 68-year-old former teacher who thought she was helping Russia catch spies. 34 attacks, 10 days, every single one carried out by Russian citizens against their own country. But this isn't a new phenomenon. Since Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, there have been over 156 documented arson and sabotage attacks across the nation. The targets reveal a disturbing pattern. Military recruitment offices, railway infrastructure connecting to Ukraine, police stations, administrative buildings, and even shopping malls. The Russian government claims these attacks are orchestrated by Ukrainian intelligence, but the truth is far more complex and sinister. How do you turn a grandmother into an arsonist? How do you convince a teenager to destroy government property? The answer lies in the most powerful weapon of the 21st century, psychological manipulation. The method is devastatingly simple. Scammers, believed to be operating from Ukraine, Poland, and even within Russia itself, obtain databases of phone numbers. They target the vulnerable, the elderly, the poor, the desperate. The call comes in. The voice is authoritative, calm, official. They claim to represent the FSB, the central bank, or the police. Your account has been compromised. Ukrainian terrorists have access to your life savings. We need your help to stop them. Transfer your money to a secure account. Or better yet, withdraw it all in cash and deliver it to a courier. Some victims comply immediately. Others hesitate. That's when the psychological warfare intensifies. If you don't cooperate, you'll be arrested for aiding terrorism. Your family will suffer. Your grandchildren will be interrogated. Fear is the ultimate motivator. And when fear doesn't work, greed does. Complete this task and receive 50,000 rubles, no questions asked. Just light the fire and walk away. For someone surviving on a monthly pension of 12,000 rubles, that's 4 months of income, enough to repair a broken heating system before winter, enough to buy medication, enough to eat properly for the first time in months.
But here's where it gets darker. Many victims never receive the promised money. They're arrested within hours. Their entire life savings, already transferred to the scammers, vanishes into untraceable cryptocurrency accounts. They lose everything: their freedom, their money, their dignity. Russian authorities have arrested hundreds of perpetrators, but the attacks keep coming, because for every person arrested, 10 more desperate souls receive that phone call. The psychological profile of these attackers reveals Russia's deepest wound: economic desperation. Inflation is crushing ordinary Russians. Sanctions have strangled the economy. Wages haven't kept pace with rising costs, and the war continues draining resources while young men disappear into the meat grinder of Ukraine. When a society fractures economically, it becomes vulnerable to manipulation, and someone is exploiting that vulnerability with surgical precision. The Kremlin's narrative is clear. This is Ukrainian sabotage. Kyiv is weaponizing Russian citizens against their own country. But intelligence analysts see a more complicated picture. Yes, Ukrainian military intelligence has publicly acknowledged running operations inside Russia. They've sabotaged railways, assassinated collaborators, and conducted drone strikes. But mass manipulation of elderly pensioners? That requires a different kind of infrastructure. Some experts believe these operations are funded by Ukrainian intelligence, but executed by Russian criminal networks. Criminal organizations that already ran phone scams before the war have simply rebranded. Instead of pretending to be bank officials stealing money, they now pretend to be security services while also stealing money. The Arson is almost a bonus, a way to increase their fee from Ukrainian handlers. Other analysts suggest an even darker possibility. Russian security services might be allowing or even facilitating some of these attacks. Why? To justify crackdowns on dissent, to prove that Ukraine is a terrorist state, to rally public support for the war by creating an atmosphere of internal threat. The truth likely lies somewhere in the chaos between all these theories. Modern hybrid warfare doesn't have clean narratives. It's messy, decentralized, and often self-sustaining. What we know for certain is this: Russia is experiencing an unprecedented wave of internal sabotage, and whether orchestrated by Ukraine, exploited by criminals, or manipulated by the Kremlin itself, the result is the same. Russia is destabilizing from within. Consider the strategic impact. Every railway station burned delays military supplies to Ukraine. Every recruitment office destroyed makes mobilization harder. Every police station attacked forces resources away from the front lines. Every arrested babushka becomes a propaganda tool for both sides. Ukraine doesn't need to defeat Russia militarily. They just need to hold long enough for Russia to collapse under the weight of its own contradictions. And these arson attacks are accelerating that collapse.
Behind every statistic is a human tragedy. Let's talk about Olga Mikhailovna, a composite character based on multiple real cases. She's 74 years old, widowed, lives alone in a crumbling Soviet-era apartment building in Samara. Her pension is 14,000 rubles a month, about $140. Her heating bill tripled this winter. She can't afford both food and warmth. The phone call came on a Tuesday. A man with a Moscow accent said her grandson was arrested for anti-war activities. To free him, she needed to prove her loyalty to Russia. The task was simple: light a fire in a government building's trash bin, take a photo as proof, receive 30,000 rubles. She'd never broken a law in her life, but her grandson, her only living family, was supposedly in prison. She believed them. She bought a bottle of gasoline, walked to the nearest military commissariat, poured the gasoline into a dumpster against the building's wall, lit a match, took a photo, sent it to the number. The building caught fire. 3 offices were destroyed. No one was hurt, but the damage exceeded 2 million rubles. The promised money never came. Instead, police arrived at her apartment the next morning. She was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Her grandson, who was never arrested, learned about her conviction from the news. This story has repeated across Russia over 156 times. Each time, a desperate person makes an impossible choice. Each time, they lose everything. And the most disturbing part? These attacks are accelerating. In 2022, there were 38 documented arson attacks linked to phone scams. In 2023, that number jumped to 84. In 2024, we've already surpassed 156, with 34 occurring in just the first 10 days of December alone. The infrastructure of manipulation is scaling up, the economic desperation is deepening, and the war shows no signs of ending.
Russia's internal collapse isn't happening through military defeat. It's happening through 1,000 small fires, each one lit by an ordinary citizen pushed past their breaking point. This is the new face of warfare, not armies clashing on battlefields, but psychological operations that turn populations against themselves. Not missiles destroying cities, but phone calls destroying social trust. Ukrainian intelligence may have pioneered the tactic, but they didn't create the conditions. Russia's economic inequality, systematic corruption, and brutal war created a society vulnerable to manipulation. Someone just figured out how to weaponize that vulnerability. The question now isn't whether these attacks will continue. They will. The question is what happens when the next wave begins. Because if 34 attacks can happen in just 10 days, what happens when that number doubles or triples? Russia's security services can't arrest every elderly person with a phone. They can't guard every building. They can't stop every desperate citizen from believing a persuasive voice promising money or threatening imprisonment. The Soviet Union didn't collapse because NATO invaded. It collapsed because its own people stopped believing in the system. Because the gap between propaganda and reality became too wide to ignore. Because economic suffering made loyalty unaffordable. History doesn't repeat, but it often rhymes. Right now, across 11 time zones, Russian citizens are receiving phone calls. Some will hang up, some will report them to authorities, but some, driven by desperation, fear, or greed, will listen. They'll believe, they'll act. And Russia will continue burning. One babushka, one teenager, one railway station at a time. The fire isn't coming from Ukraine's missiles, it's coming from inside the house, and that makes it impossible to extinguish. Because how do you fight an enemy when the enemy is your own population's despair? That's the question Russia can't answer, and until they do, the fires will keep spreading.